Today I have Kevin Kranick, who is an 11-year Air Force retiree. He has received the #1 sales agent in the country for the company that he's worked for the past 25 years. He claims he uses biblical principles that is the primary reason why he's so successful. I'm interested in having a conversation with him today. So Kevin,
Yes, sir.
Kranick,
Kranick.
what nationality is that?
So it's linked to Ukraine.
Is that right?
But it's my adopted name.
Uh-huh.
My birth name is Duncan, Duncan. But it's been Kevin Kranick since 5th grade.
So Kranick is a Ukrainian name.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Are you familiar with the Ukraine stuff?
Yeah, I'm familiar with what's going on between Russia and Ukraine.
It's over my head.
Yeah, a little over mine too.
So you've come from Georgia.
Yes, I
Which
have.
is what part?
So I live in Ackworth, Georgia. Was born in Noonan, Georgia, but I was raised in New Jersey.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
How long were you raised in New Jersey?
Oh, pretty much from 2nd grade till I graduated high school.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you like the South better?
I like both. People have different opinions. People that live in the South have an opinion of the North, and the people in the North have an opinion of the South.
What's your opinion?
I kind of call myself an American.
Yeah.
But the North people are really straightforward.
Uh-huh.
They tell you what they're thinking. And they're going to be pretty blunt with you. The people in the South sometimes aren't as much. They may smile, but they may not necessarily like you, but they'll be pleasant to you. Up in the North, if they don't like you, they're not really going to be as pleasant. It's pretty much straightforward in New Jersey.
Wonder why that is.
That's a good question.
I mean, why? Because that's pretty well everybody knows that's kind of the way it is.
It is.
But I don't know what would be the reason for that. Maybe faster paced life.
So we had a lady that worked here in our company down here, and then they transfer her up to our corporate office in Maple Shade, New Jersey. So she calls me one day before she goes up there, and she said, "Kevin, I've been just talking to a lot of people about what it's going to be like in New Jersey, and I'm not getting a lot of good feedback." And I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. Are the people you're talking to all from the South, or have you talked to anybody from the North yet?" And she goes, "No, I haven't talked to anybody from the North." And I said, "Okay, here's how it's going to kind of go for you. You're a single lady. You're going to go up there. You're going to meet people. One thing they love to do up there is invite you over and have dinner, have a barbecue. Like, you're always invited. People are always eating together and breaking bread." Mm-hmm. And she's like, "Really?" I go, "Oh, yeah, you're going to like it. People will like you." She calls me about a month later. She says, "I've been invited every weekend to a barbecue." And I said, "See, it's pretty good."
Now, see, you'd be more likely to be invited here to a barbecue if you were in the family.
If you're in the family, that's right.
So up north, they're not as standoffish as we're perceived, right?
No, they're always inviting. Even when I was growing up, kids were always coming over to the house to eat. We were always going over to somebody else's house to eat. Uh-huh. It was just kind of the way of life, and as people get older, they're just like, "Hey, come on over and eat at our place. Come over and hang out at our house. We'll watch the game. Come on over." So, yeah, very open.
How far is Noonan from here?
Well, Ackworth's probably about 2 hours from here. Uh-huh. Noonan's probably another 45. So maybe 2 hours and 45, maybe 3 hours, you could say.
What's the temperature there today?
Maybe about 4 to 5 degrees warmer than here.
That's a big difference.
Oh, it is.
I mean,
yeah.
When it's 36 degrees here.
It is. It is.
So the company you work for, Stonehard, I think that I've talked to y'all before.
Yeah,
for some epoxy resin.
Yes.
Resin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our company has been around since 1922. They manufacture and install epoxy resinous flooring, and I've been with them for about 25 years. They're based out of Maple Shade, New Jersey, but they are international. And so I work out of the divisional office in the Atlanta, Georgia area.
Is that what brought you to Georgia?
What brought me to Georgia, partly yes, but partly that my brother's been living in Atlanta for a lot longer than I have, and he works for the company. So he's actually a vice president in the company.
Still now?
Oh yeah. He graduated college on a Friday and went to work for Stoneheart on a Monday. Has been with him ever since.
Is that right?
And so he was here. I was getting out of the Air Force and I was looking for things, and I was on job interviews in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So he calls me one day and he says, "Hey, Mom said you're getting out of the Air Force and you're looking at jobs. Have you ever thought about our company?" I said, "Well, frankly, Scotty, I don't even know what you do." Mm-hmm. Like I know a little bit, but not enough. He told me a little bit about it, and then he said, "Oh, by the way, Mom's moving here too," and stuff. And I said, "Oh, okay." And I said, "But they have an office in Texas, right?" And he said, "They do." And I said, "I really love it in Texas." And I was living in Arlington, Texas at the time. And he said, "Well, why don't you interview with a guy here from Atlanta?" I said, "Well, why don't I interview with the people in Texas? Because I don't want them to know that I'm your brother.
Yeah.
So they can just meet me and judge me for who I am."
Yeah.
And he said, "Okay, we compete against other divisions across. I don't want you to be competing against me." And so he kind of twisted my arm, and the boss came out there and interviewed me, and he said, "Pick him up at the airport." And I said, "Well, what does he look like? How am I going to know what he looks like?" He goes, "He looks like a senator." And I said, "Oh, okay, so like white hair and he's going to have on a suit and tie?" That was my picture, right?
Yeah.
And he said, "Absolutely." So I pull up and I'm waiting. All of a sudden this guy walks out. I jump out of the car and I said, "You've got to be Wayne." And he goes, "You're Kevin?" I said, "I am." And he said, "How did you know?" I said, "Well, my brother said you look like a senator, and you kind of do." And he goes, "Let's go interview." And then I moved to Georgia. So that's what brought me here.
But you like it in Georgia?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So my family was here. My brother, and his family, my nieces were here. My mom moved here. And my grandparents from my dad's side lived in Noonan. So there was a lot of family here now.
Boy, a lot of people migrate down here because of industry.
They do.
More so than you'd realize.
Yeah.
Now, this Stoneheart, they do just resins?
So we do, so resin's kind of like a chemistry, and there's different types, from epoxies to urethanes to polyesters to vinyl esters to a lot of different things. And so we do the flooring, and we manufacture and install it. We do walls as needed as well. We have a few other companies that are a part of us that we own, as in Liquid Elements, which is more of a front of the house type flooring. So we do some high profile projects. I did the Georgia Aquarium when it was built, and I've done most of the projects in there since then with expansions. I've done the new Braves facility. And so those are just kind of a couple of high profile facilities.
So your company does the whole project?
So we work as a subcontractor underneath whoever the general contractor would be, and we handle just our portion of that work that we would have for whatever flooring and whatever our scope is. It would be that. We specialize in that, so we kind of stick with that.
So you would like bid on big government jobs, I guess?
Yeah, we have big government jobs, state jobs, schools, hospitals, research facilities, manufacturing, industrial, the whole thing.
Where does Torganol fit into that? That was what they used in the 70s, right? A lot of.
Yeah, and I don't think they're really in that right now, like as far as, something that I think of as like competition.
Right, because that's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and so I think of, with us, it's more like it separates us a little bit differently as a manufacturer, and we oversee the installation and we turnkey it. So our warranty is a turnkey installation. It's not split between an applicator and a manufacturer.
Right, that's a big deal.
It is, because then you get finger pointing.
He said.
Yeah, they installed it wrong. Now they gave us the wrong product.
You have to acid wash everything before you apply?
No, that was in the olden days.
Uh-huh.
So now it's more of a mechanical preparation. So
right.
If it's bigger areas, you're shot blasting the floor.
Mm-hmm.
If it's smaller areas, you're diamond grinding the floor, the edges of it, hook to vacuum. So everything's kind of evolved a little bit, as well as making sure you have been tested and tested for silica as you're grinding the floors and wearing masks and stuff like that. So it's grown a lot.
A big thing right now is the diamond grinding of concrete and leaving it really slick glass look. Do y'all ever do that and then put epoxy on top of that?
Well, we mechanically prepare everything we do, and then we put the epoxy system over it. So we have to do that in order to get a good bond to the concrete, even if it's brand new concrete. Yeah, absolutely.
Boy, that's a complicated business, isn't it? Because it's all about timing and
it is
specific, very specific.
So I run the Atlanta commercial side of it in Atlanta. So I'm bidding on more commercial work and doing things through hospitals and general contractors, things of that nature. And so I bid the work, I do presentations, I help to oversee all the installations, make sure the material gets there. So we project manage the whole entire thing. Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is, especially when you're running 10 to 12 jobs a month.
Yeah.
And staying on top and then getting new business going and continuing to do that.
And with the big commercial jobs, you usually have a schedule you have to submit prior to.
Absolutely. And in today's world with inflation, with COVID that happened, shipping, a lot of issues. And so scheduling wise, it's just been a juggling act because we're having to go by and check on the jobs, and being that we're a finish, we're towards the end. So everything kind of gets pushed out. Kevin, we're not going to be ready in 2 weeks. It's going to be 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you're managing your crew to make sure they're staying busy and the guys are getting paychecks and keeping them busy.
That's where you have to have I have to have some jobs that are sort of break even to keep everybody busy. So I've got them when I need them.
That's right.
I don't know what you call that, but I know you have to have it.
That's a good way to put it. Break even. Yeah.
It's just really literally break even.
Yeah. There's projects and you want to get them just because you want to have them too, but it's not, maybe there's not a profit, they're not as profitable on that, but you're keeping your crew busy.
Because if you don't have them available, you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
Yeah. So I meet once a week with my my crew, and we go through all the scheduling over the current month and the following month, and sometimes the month beyond that. And we look at projects that far out.
Plus the bidding of them. You got that, and then you've got 10 jobs that are looming that may be coming.
Correct.
There's always those.
Yeah, you're having to follow up on those, the new stuff, maintain what you're doing, and making sure it goes in right. And I think the biggest thing is, in our company, we call it a territory manager. More in the GC world or the general contractor world, you really call it a project manager.
Yeah.
And that's really truly what it is. Is it sales? Absolutely. But you're putting on other hats. It's almost like your territory, you own your own company because you're having to do the sales, the project management, the install, all the change orders, the RFIs, everything that comes with that.
That's when you're wearing a button-up shirt, but you got on work boots.
You got it. Yeah. Or it's in the back of your trunk.
You know who it always reminded me of? Remember that old show, Family Affair?
Oh, yeah.
That was what he did. He was kind of a general that's what inspired me originally to be a contractor, because he was a big contractor, but he lived in New York but he had to get dirty at times too.
He did.
Do you ever find yourself doing stuff you say, boy, if anybody saw this, they'd think I was crazy? The little stuff?
Probably every day, because I think with I've been in this for 25 years, so I've seen how technology has grown and used things. And, with the social media, everything is more fast-paced. Everything is, hey, Kevin, I need this yesterday, as opposed to, oh, well, wait a minute, how long have you had it?
Yeah.
I just got it the day before. Okay. And so it's not like they're holding on to things either, but it's just become kind of like a standard that everybody's expecting everything to happen that quickly. And social media has been great, I think, in so many ways, but I think in some ways it's caused some issues, I think, within every industry that you can think of. I think even within the construction, because everything's so expedited. And I think there's more pressure put on people to get things done. And you've really got to do a really good balancing trick to balance your life, because it's when I talk to other guys, it's always like, I can't get caught up. I can't get caught up. It's like their favorite words. And I think that's just because of the emails and all the text messages that come at you, and trying to really manage that. And because you want to honor your customers, you want to honor the people that are reaching out to you. And so when we bring in new guys and maybe they ride with me, the only thing I tell them is, I said, listen, if somebody's reached out to you, even if you don't have an answer, please get back to them, call them, and just say, hey, listen, can I get back to you tomorrow afternoon? I'm waiting for an answer. And I think sometimes there's people that are, and I don't like to use ages, but this time frame of people where they're a little younger, and they have a little bit of phone apprehension. And so it's like they're afraid to pick up the phone and call, because I'll say, call somebody, and they'll text them.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I didn't want you to text them. This was an issue. You have to call them. And my youngest son, who's 18, he was applied for a job. And I said, hey, how's that going? He said, well, it's going pretty good, Dad. I just haven't heard back from him. And I said, do you want to separate yourself from the pack? He goes, yeah. How do I do that? And I said, I want you to go to the store, walk in, and ask to speak to the manager. He goes, what am I going to say to him? Say, hello, my name's Christopher Kranick, and I'm here for a job. And I've applied online, but ma'am, I wanted to separate myself and come in and talk to you, because it was a lady. And we already knew that and researched it. And I said, and just go tell her, hey, I also am fluent in Spanish. I can help you in those areas as well. And she hired him on the spot.
Oh, I'm sure.
And, he was just like, wow.
It's too simple, isn't it?
It is. We forget about, God created us for a community. He created us to be together. And I like listening to a lady named Dr. Caroline Leaf. She's a Christian, but she's a neuroscientist. So she breaks down the brain and how it works.
I've listened to her
the
before.
Power of our words. And I was listening to her recently, and she said that we are, as a community, one of the loneliest that we've ever been. And because of technology, because we can isolate so well. And so when I look at that, and I look at what I have to do in sales, I'm always like talking to people and being like, hey, can I come see you? Can I come talk to you, even if it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes? All right, well, you don't have to drive there, Kevin, to do that. I said, oh, I don't mind the drive.
Yeah, it's all right.
I'm coming.
Yeah.
All right, come in and see me. And I think that separates me as well in that, because a lot of people just live by the text, or they live by the email. And I think if you can kind of get the face-to-face appointments because of how we're built and designed by God, it can't go wrong. People need people, and they just want to be heard.
I think text messages are for 2 words or 3. Okay,
yes.
10:30, 4:30.
That's right.
But emails are more for information that you can get in of an afternoon and print it off and download it and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you want to establish a relationship, which you need, you've got to go face to face, or at a minimum, hear the voice.
Oh, yeah. You do. It helps so much. And they attach something to it.
I think that's the key.
And I heard a pastor the other day was talking, and he said, when you're going through a struggle or whatever you're going through in life, if you can, what you're trying to speak to get out of your situation, if you can attach an image in your mind and see yourself already here, even though you're here, and as soon as you get that picture, you'll start going that way.
I think your brain will find a path, maybe.
It will. It does. And I think that's when people see you, they get a picture of who you are. And I think it impacts them more.
It's like drawing a straight line. If you draw like that, it's not that straight. But if you look at the point you're going, it'll be straighter every time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I think there's in the construction business, I'm seeing that half the stuff can happen now in lightning speed. But that other stuff, you still have to wait for the resin to dry, for the sheetrock to dry,
You do.
for the inspection,
You do.
that sort of stuff. So
Yes.
I'm almost starting, used to construction would kind of go at a good steady pace. Now it sort of like goes and then stops, and then it'll go and then stop. And I think that's
Right.
the going is the emails and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
and even shipping now. Shipping is of course we've got the supply chain now, but to have something here in 2 days that's available is not a problem.
Right.
But it just seems, I think that's why the construction business is appearing more choppy.
Well, and I get calls a lot, and they'll be like, well, Kevin, the mechanical guys, they're still missing some of the stuff they need that hasn't gotten in yet. They're saying it's still 3 weeks out. Well, you can't move on.
You
You know,
can't.
as a finish, you've got to wait.
Now you got to put another job in there.
That's right.
And I guess the mechanicals, because you got to have the air on or have
You
the,
do. Our stuff is
Yeah.
temperature sensitive, so we like it climate controlled. So because it lays out nicer, it's a finish, so it really should be right towards the end before occupancy or before there's other things
Yeah.
they've got to do.
And it needs time to dry before they move furniture on and scar the floor up.
Yeah, and a lot of our stuff, it'll cure in the next day. So if we're finishing on a Thursday, they can get on it on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we'll just tell them put down some plastic or ram board, just put something down for protection.
We'd rather you wait 2 days, but if you have to, sort of thing.
Absolutely. Because there's other trades that get in afterwards, and they're not looking at the finish. They're focused on what they got to get done.
What's one of the very menial jobs that you have to do that is almost like for instance, tomorrow I got a lot going on, but I'm going to be in this guy's basement putting these plugs under his shelf because there aren't any the right color, and I found them at Ace Hardware, and I might as well just go do it myself because I'd never be able to explain to somebody what I'm doing.
I would say for me and what I'm doing right now, the amount of paperwork that I have is a lot. And so I'm good at it, but I'm probably better in front of people too. But I'm still good on the paperwork side. So there's some times where there's so much paperwork to check off that it's almost like everybody's trying to CYA and cover themselves. So you're having to go do extra that maybe one thing could happen. I'll give you an example. One time I'm out in the field going between appointments, and my phone's just emails are flying, but it's on one subject. And there's about 5 or 6 people on this email going back and forth.
Oh, God.
And so finally I pull over and I emailed everybody and I said, hey, listen, let's stop the emails. Can everybody pick up the phone and talk for 5 minutes? Call my number. Let's go. We all talked. We got it resolved in like
Wasn't even a
5
problem.
minutes. One thing, there was a miscommunication on the email, 6 chains back. But on the phone call, we got it so resolved. But it's stuff like that to remind people, hey, wait a minute, man, that phone that was created, it works. Like it's still an operational thing. Yeah. And so that just solved it. So there's little things like that, and trying to manage people and really get them to understand that, okay, especially younger, step out for a minute and take a breath and let's see where things are. Don't keep pushing the email. Don't keep pushing the text messages and stuff. If it's not working, try something else.
Another thing that drives me crazy, if me and this other guy is engaged in this email conversation and I answer y'all, and then you reply to me, but not to us, now he's out of the conversation.
Right.
He doesn't know what you said to me, and now I have to copy him.
Yeah.
There should be a protocol of, if me and you and him are talking, if you reply to us all.
Right.
Because he's going to get missed.
Right. Yeah. And I see that too, even like, let's say I'm working directly with a hospital and there's a project manager, there's a director, there's another person over here, and then me and maybe 2 other contractors.
And don't forget, they're going to put the department head in that mix too that doesn't know anything about what's going on.
Correct. And there's like 6.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes you'll be like, okay, it's flowing, and all of a sudden it doesn't flow anymore. And you know somebody's had a conversation that you haven't been included into.
You know it every time.
You know it every time. That's exactly right. That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, it's new things that people are learning. And then how do you deal with the new technology and the new way of protecting people and honoring people at the same time?
One thing that I've started doing that's pretty handy, instead of texting something, I'll push that record button and I'll give them a voice.
Oh yeah.
Recording. You know, like it says, so it's a step above the text.
Correct.
So, you know, it says, hey, I'm sorry I can't be there till Thursday at 3:00. Will that work for you?
Right.
Rather than saying, how about Thursday?
Right.
It's a little bit different. And then they can also forward that voicemail to somebody.
Else.
So but I forget to do that sometimes.
Yeah. Like I said, those are great things about technology. There are tremendous things.
And, you know, you can also get some of the guys to send you pictures and makes you feel like you've been to the job.
Yeah.
That helps too, because I feel like I've got to go to the job so much. If I go to the job, I didn't need to go to the job. If I don't, I needed to. So sometimes I just go and make sure there wasn't nothing I need and get back in the car and leave.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem.
Now, you've been in the military for 11 years. How is that organization different than what you're involved with now?
Well, you know, I used to think that when I was in the Air Force, we called it the civilian world, was a lot different. Mm-hmm. However, the Air Force is kind of unique in a lot of ways, and all the branches are great. I had my daughter, she was in the Marines. My son-in-law was in the Marines. So I respect them all. I would just say that the Air Force probably has more commercial related jobs, civilian related jobs. And so when you look at that and what I was doing, so I started off in drafting, then I was in the construction management department. And I did that for a while. And then towards the very end, I actually got into recruiting. And that wasn't something that I was looking for. I had never thought about sales in my whole life. And I got divorced. And so what happened was she moved away and she went to North Carolina. I'm in Texas. Now I just couldn't go to North Carolina because I'm in the Air Force. Mm-hmm. So they actually had orders for me to go to Montana, which means I was going to be even further away. Mm-hmm. So I sat down and I said, what is one way that I could kind of control staying put in one place and not being sent all over? And I made some calls and people said, Kevin, what about recruiting? I said, okay, I'll find out. So I was living in the Arlington, Fort Worth area. I called the office in Fort Worth and I talked to the NCO in charge. And I just said, hey, I'm over here at Carswell Air Force Base. We're shutting down soon. And I'm helping to close the base. But I'd like to come over and check out the recruiting and with you and talk to you. He said, okay, come on over. So I think I went 3 days later to meet with him. We got to talking and he said, hey, and we were right in the downtown Fort Worth area. So his office was in all the big buildings and everything. He points across the street and he says, you see that lady? Maybe it's her grandmother and her daughter. I said, yeah. He goes, go talk to them and bring them into the office. And I said, okay, no worries.
Yeah.
So I went across the street and I said, hey, ma'am, talking to the mom. And I said, I'm with the Air Force. And I said, I just wanted to see if you would talk for about 5 minutes to come across the street with us. I said, and I would just really appreciate it. If you don't want to, that's okay too. And she goes, you look like a nice boy. She goes, we'll come over and talk to you for about 5 minutes. And that was it. And I went to recruiting school. They had a washout rate that was pretty high. And so we did a lot of sales training. And it wasn't sales training to where people think sometimes sales has a negative connotation. Mm-hmm. And when people say that to me, I said, everybody sells. I said, do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a wife? Did you get a job? Yeah. I said, somewhere along the line, you had to sell yourself on who you are. And it really changed my life and really turned it around. Because then I was speaking to young people who didn't have the money to go to college. And they were looking for other avenues. And I knew in the Air Force, I got my degree in the Air Force, so I knew they could get theirs too, and that the Air Force would help pay for it. So I ended up getting into the recruiting side of it, and I did really, really well. And I remember in my training towards the end, so they had a room kind of like this, but they had like a big window that you couldn't see out. But on the other side, there was 2 or 3 instructors, and they were grading you. And so the person walks in, which happened to be a lady, and she was wanting me to sell her into the ROTC or the Air Force Academy programs. And so she came and I met her like I had an appointment, and then they're behind there evaluating you. So if you failed, you had one more fire to do the next morning at 6 a.m. If you failed that one, you're gone. So that was the pressure you were kind of under. Yeah. And I'll never forget that. So when we got done, she was evaluating me and she's telling me things. And she said, you know, there's certain things you can't teach people. And she said, but there's one thing that works for you. And I said, what's that? And she said, you're very sincere and stuff. And I said, well, if I didn't believe it, I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I said, so whatever I'm telling you is what I believe in. And that's the same with Stoneheart. We have great products. So, you know, I stand behind it. And, you know who Zig Ziglar is?
Yeah.
So I used to love listening to Zig. And he'd always tell us that people would call him, his friends and other people, and say, Zig, what's the hottest thing to get into in sales right now? And he'd always say to them, don't look at it from that perspective. What are you passionate about? And he goes, whatever you're passionate about, that's what you should go in, and that's what you'll do. Now, I can't say that I was passionate about floors, you know, but as I learned about them and what they could do and help and different things and the longevity, then I became passionate. But I was still more passionate about the people I was meeting.
About meeting them or about?
Meeting them, relationships, getting to know them, the whole thing. You know, and when I first started with Stoneheart, I had walked away from God when my little brother died in a car accident, and he was 17. I was a Christian for all of about a year.
How old were you then?
Probably 22.
Boy, yeah. That's tough.
And I was in the Air Force. I got a call late one night from my grandmother. She's crying, and it's like 3 a.m. And I thought, it's my grandfather that she's crying to tell me something about, not my brother. And he got in a car accident, and I found out that night he got in an argument with my mom. My mom had went out, and he snuck out of the house, even though he was grounded. And he was in the back of a bed of a truck, and they were racing. And I guess somebody cut him off. They lost and hit a telephone pole. So the truck went whoosh, like that. Him and his friend flew up in the air and landed. So they were in a coma, and they both had a blood clot. But where my brother's blood clot was about an 1/8 inch deeper than his friend's, which meant they told us if we went to where the blood clot is, he would be a vegetable the rest of his life. So we decided to take him off the machines. And I'm probably a Christian all of about a year. And everybody left the room, but I stayed last. And I thought God was a God who would negotiate with me. And I said, Lord, if you let him live, you can have me. Take me, but let him live. And that didn't happen. I'm here. And my brother went off to heaven. I found out he had accepted Christ and stuff. And that just impacted me so much. I didn't realize at that time that I really was angry at God. And I couldn't internalize it. I couldn't verbalize it. It was like I had to go back to the Air Force and go back to doing what I was doing. And I just slowly walked away from God. And then I moved here. And I moved here in 97. Now, I still wasn't back with God. Yet, I come here, and slowly but surely, I would have people come up to me. Like, I drove a lot in sales, and I'd be at the gas station. And, you know, people don't really talk to people a lot at the gas station. You get your gas, you get in your car, and you take off.
Yeah.
But I had people coming up and talking to me. Like, one guy comes up and he wants to talk to me about Jesus. And I said, tell him no. I said, press on, get lost, not interested. Mm-hmm. Happened another time. Then it happened a third time. The third time, I'm in Kennesaw, Georgia at a gas station. I know exactly where I was. And this guy's walking, and he's kind of off over here to the left side. And he's walking towards me. And I'm like, good God, here's another one, right? Mm-hmm. So I finish my gas, and I turn to him, I go, stop. Mm-hmm. He goes, what? I go, you're coming up to talk to me about one of two things, and I'm not interested in either one. Mm-hmm. He goes, two? I go, yeah, you're either a born-again Christian to come talk to me about Jesus, or you're an Amway salesman. Mm-hmm. And I don't want either one of you, like that. And he starts cracking up. He says, oh, I'm both. I'm not kidding. He goes, I'm both. And I said, oh, man. And
was he sure enough both?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What are the odds?
He's telling me this. That's why I was like, okay. And so I said, listen, I said, I grew up Catholic, and then I kind of became a Christian in 86 or 85. And I said, then I walked away. And I said, so if you're familiar with Catholicism, you walk into the church and there's the holy water. And when you walk in, you touch it and they go like this, the name of the Father, the Son, right? And they go in. And I said, so if I were to touch that right now, it would bubble like that. This is what I'm telling this guy. I go, so God doesn't want me. And he's like, wow. He goes, you must have a great calling on your life. And I said, what? He goes, you must have a great calling. I go, why? He said, God sent me over to talk to you because he loves you and he already knows your stuff, dude. He goes, but I'm not going to keep talking. I'm going to walk away like you asked me to. And he said, but just remember, if God sent me and other people to you at gas stations, he must really be wanting you. I said, yeah, all right. And then several months goes by and I'm getting ready for work one morning. And I'm trying to tie my tie, which back then people wore ties more and stuff. And I can't tie the tie. And I'm getting frustrated. And all of a sudden, tears are coming down my cheek. And I was like, oh, good Lord, what is going on? So I throw my tie up against the bathroom mirror. I go, I got appointments. I got a whole day scheduled. Yeah. And all of a sudden, the tears just start flooding. And I walk out and I was just like, oh no. I walked into my bedroom, fell on my knees, tore my shirt, my dress shirt, tore it off. And I just said, okay, God, what do you want?
Were you frustrated at the time?
I was frustrated that I was worried I was going to miss my appointments.
So you had business on your mind.
I had business on my mind. God had other plans. And so at that moment, he said, I want you to cancel your appointments today. I want you to find a pastor in a church and go talk to him.
How old are you then?
So this is 97. I'm 33, somewhere around there. And I was like, okay. I go, I guess you're not going to give up. And I said, I'm sorry. And so I got out the yellow pages. and I'm looking up churches in the yellow pages. So I find one called North Point. No, not North Point. It was North Star in Kennesaw, Georgia. And all of a sudden, I was like, well, that one looks like a pretty cool name. I'll call that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I call. Lady answers. I said, ma'am, I need to speak to the pastor today and set up a meeting. I know it's last minute, but I have to do it today. And she's like, well, sir, we don't have anybody available. I said, ma'am, let me just tell you what happened to me. God just told me I need to find a pastor and talk to one today. I'm afraid if I don't, this will never happen in the future. She goes, hold on. And then one of the assistant pastors was available, so I went and talked to him. And it was about 2.5 hours later, he's like, his mouth's open, like it fell. And I thought that was curious.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I just haven't sat with a man before who, usually with guys, I got to pull it out of them. With you just have like laid everything in front of me. I said, well, God told me to do it, so I'm doing it.
Was there stuff on your mind?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you think about
Just life?
Yeah, life, things that you've done, stupid things, things you wouldn't normally do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I started going to church there.
Is that the big one?
No, North Point is the big one with Andy Stanley.
That's the one that has the security guards and everything, yeah.
North Star is a pretty good size one too.
Yeah.
And there was a guy named Ike Reichert who was the pastor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's not with them anymore. And Pastor Mike's there. I forget Mike's last name right now, but it was a good, it was really got me back into my life. And when it did, it turned around my work at Stoneheart.
Were you doing good prior to that?
I was doing good. Yeah. It was, you could pat yourself kind of instead of with God.
Yeah.
But I think what God started introducing me to was a better clientele of people. And
did you operate different prior to that than you did after?
I was always pretty open and straightforward. I was still we're trying to honor people. I would never cut corners or hurt people in that way. That wasn't my way. But God just started having me look at it from a whole different perspective.
What would some call it? Luck? The luck changed? Would they say that?
Yeah.
Not luck, but you'd say, boy, I'm getting better customers, better clients, better jobs. Better.
Yeah, because the ones before I would get would be cussing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started getting ones who didn't cuss. Mm-hmm. And it's not that the guys who were cussing were bad guys.
No, or that you were necessarily doing anything different.
Right.
It just
that God just started, I started praying differently. I learned that at that time about tithe, because my first year as just walking as a baby Christian, I didn't really get to that part of it, but I started learning about tithing and how it helped me, and it helped pay off debt within like 18 months, completely gone. And all of a sudden I started seeing my business climb. And it was just praying into things that I was praying over. So I'd pray over the jobs that I was going. I'd pray on the bids that were happening. I would pray for my company as well. And then our company, as it progressed, started looking at, like before we'd have a territory and I might handle federal government, industrial, and commercial. And they wanted to grow and diversify where they had more of their territory managers like specialize in industrial market, in the federal market, in the commercial market. So in the field, we called it splitting of your territory. And when they did that, I was doing well. And I looked at my 50% of my business was industrial, 50% was commercial. And I go, wow, I'm going to lose 50% of my business. And so when this split occurred, it was also during the 2008, 2009 timeframe where the market tanked. So everybody you talked to talked about inflation and the market tanking. And I found myself complaining internally as I'm driving, frustrated. I saw that my numbers, I wasn't doing as well. And because of the split. but my attitude was negative, not necessarily towards with the company personnel, but in my mind or to my wife and talking, it was like I'm complaining about stuff.
On the courthouse square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland-Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call.
Yeah, I remember 2008. Things really started getting bad in the construction business.
Yeah.
So you were doing stuff exactly like you were doing before, but it was just.
Yeah, it was looking at it from a different perspective. It wasn't from the angle of what you can get out of it and the money that you can make, although that was important. Mm-hmm. It was still really the relationships that you started to build, and really from a spiritual perspective, like you're praying over things and watching things happen through your prayer, and watching jobs that were going so that you start praying over, and all of a sudden a turn would just happen, and then the job would go beautiful. And it was like, there's no way that could have happened without God, for me.
And I've had stuff like that happen, and it's only I know. And that's what you're saying. It's stuff that only you would be able to detect.
Correct.
That it just, they decided they didn't want this no more.
That's
that sort
right.
of stuff.
Oh, yeah. And I think, too, having sometimes the courage where you get to know the person. And I remember a gentleman with a construction company, and he was telling me about the struggles with his daughter and son-in-law and what was going on. And it was just, you could just tell there was so much frustration.
Angst, they call it.
Yeah, that whole angst.
Yeah.
And we're walking out the site, and I said, hey, can I pray for you? Now, I don't know anything beyond what we've established, and he's married.
Yeah.
We hadn't gotten beyond that port, but I just felt like God was putting it on my heart. Pray with him. And man, he was like so happy that I even said that. A month later, I'm back over on the job. He goes, things turned after we prayed. It improved. And it was just like, well, that's Jesus, baby. And it's not like you're in their face with it, because I want to honor people too. Like some people, as soon as you say the word Jesus, they pull back. And I just would rather get to know them. And this is at the same time as what I was telling you in the 2008, when there was a split in mine with the commercial and the industrial, and I chose the commercial. So back then I had this Chevy truck, and I'm driving on Highway 92 in Woodstock, Georgia. And I'm coming up to a light, and all of a sudden, I've never heard an audible voice from God, but I've heard, like, how he speaks to you in your spirit. And here's what I heard. Kevin, who's the one who opens doors and closes doors? And if I open them, nobody can close it. If I close it, nobody can open it. I knew exactly what he was talking about. And it was about this split where I was upset. And I said, oh, Lord, I'm so sorry. He goes, Kevin, I'm the one who opened that door and made that shift. But you're going around complaining. So you're missing out on the blessings that are right in front of you. He goes, so I need you tonight to go home and pray and ask for forgiveness and forgive those people that you think did this to you. Because they didn't. They're trying to grow their business too in a different way. And oh, by the way, don't get caught up on entitlement. It's not yours. It's not your territory. It's my territory. And probably 3 weeks before that, we're at church, and there was this pastor who came in from Israel. And this goes right in line with what I'm telling you, because it's going to blow your mind. So we're in church, and this pastor's speaking, and he was raised in New York, But he was Jewish, converted to a Christian, but he took his whole family to Israel because God told him to. And he went there, knowing that when he's there and he's going to stay there and live there, his kids would have to go into the military as well. So he goes over there to turn Jews to Christ. And so while he's speaking and we're hearing this story, I hear in my spirit God say, give him $1,000 today. And I said, I must have heard that wrong, right? So I ignore it. I hear it again. Ignore it. My wife taps me. Hun, God's telling me that we should give him money today. I said, how much? She goes, 500. And I said, okay, write the check.
I'll take that one.
Right? And all of a sudden she stops and she says, no, I was afraid you were going to get upset. 500 is not the number. I go, it's 1,000, isn't it? She goes, you've heard? I go, twice. I go, write the check. So we write the check and we give it to this gentleman. So now fast forward, I'm back in the truck on Highway 92 in Woodstock. And here's the other thing God tells me, 2 other things. Go home tonight and pray for them. They're not the ones that did this. Number 2, I want you to start giving money to that pastor in Israel. And Kevin, it's not a volume. It's just your heart. Whether it's $25, $50 a paycheck or a month, whatever that looks like to you, I'm not worried about it. Here's number 3. Now, our company goes fiscally from June to May. This is like March, mid to end of March. And he says, starting in June, I'm going to have men call you that are struggling and going through stuff. And I want you to pray with them. And I said, during work hours? He goes, yes. Now, here's what I say to God. Funny, right? Like, not like he doesn't have all on his plate, right? Yeah. I said, Lord, do you know how busy I am? I go, do you understand? I can't, I don't know. I mean, I could do it a little bit, but not to the level I think you're asking me. He said, I need you to trust me. That's why I'm doing this. Now, this is coming up to when the things are tanking. Then he says one last thing. When somebody calls you, and when you're talking to anybody, I don't care if you're at the bank, a restaurant, or anybody, somebody complains about the economy, do not go into agreement with them and tell them my God is not bound by this inflation or this economy. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So I did that. I go home that night to pray. Before I said anything to my wife, she says to me, Kevin, God put this on my heart a while ago, but he now told me today, you're ready to hear it. And I'm thinking, oh man, this is something that happened in the truck. And she said, we need to pray for the people in management because it's not them that did anything. God wanted to do this. They were just trying to grow their business. And oh, by the way, you don't own that territory. And I just had tears coming down my eyes. And I said, let's pray. And then it took away everything that I had inside of me. And it was like gone. I felt clean. I felt good about them. Loved them again. So fast forward, June 1st, new fiscal year. Now, we also started giving to Israel. Here was the funniest thing. End of March to April and May, I got more orders in 2.5 months that equaled the whole year before. And I found a verse in the Bible where it says talking about blessing Israel. And my whole point wasn't to give to Israel so that I would be blessed financially. I didn't even recognize that verse at the time. It was just God was telling me to do it. And I was like, okay, I got to do something different. I got to try what he's telling me to do. I did that. Then it ended up, it was off the charts. People were calling me and saying, hey, Kevin, I got your number from so-and-so. I've got a job for you.
And that was during the bad economy.
Oh, I've got a job for you. And it was like in the middle of it and through the shifting of it.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, okay. But you don't even know me and I haven't even priced it. And he goes, oh no, don't worry. My buddy told me you're very fair and it'll work out. Job's yours. Just come give me a job and we'll talk numbers. Oh, okay. I'm not even calling anybody. They're calling me through these 2.5 months.
With half the territory now.
With half the territory. And I was like, oh my God. And so June 1st, right? Comes up. It's like 7:15 in the morning. I'm going down 75 to a job. I have one job starting and I got to hit another job. And you got to make sure the jobs are going off and your crew's ready. Because if the jobs aren't ready, they're complaining.
Right.
Things don't go well, or you're going to pay them more money, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Buddy calls me. And I was like, hey, Todd, what's up? He says, man, I'm in a bind right now. My wife and I got in a big argument and a big fight. He's telling me all this stuff. And I was like, oh, this is going to take a while. Like he's going to be talking when I'm hitting the job site.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I go, oh, March, God told me he's going to have people start calling me. Day one, he has somebody call me. So all of a sudden I said to my friend, Todd, hang on for a minute. Okay. I pull over into a gas station. I said, Lord, if this is about March and it's already starting, come day one of the new fiscal year, then I need your help. Because I can't help him and be on these 2 jobs. And they're already calling me. And I'm not even calling them back because I'm talking to him. I need you to take care of that. Mm-hmm. So I trusted God. I didn't go to these jobs. I stayed in that gas station talking to my friend for an hour and 15 minutes. So I get off. Another buddy calls. I was like, I got to call somebody.
Yeah.
Talk to that guy for about 30 minutes. Another guy calls me.
Golly.
39 minutes, 3 guys. So all of a sudden, okay, is it slowing down? Like, can I make a phone call? So I call my crews on these 2 jobs. Oh, hey, Kevin, you don't have to come by.
Everything's going great.
Everything's going perfect.
Yeah.
I go, yeah, but you called me earlier. He goes, yeah, but it got straightened out really fast. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to swing by anyway, just say hi, or whatever.
Yeah.
After lunch, I had 3 phone calls come in from 3 different people giving me 3 POs for work. 3 POs helped 3 people. That year, I broke the 2 million mark in Stoneheart, the first guy to break the 2 million mark. I could tell you it was my easiest year I've ever worked in this company with that volume. I had all the calls were coming to me. It was just like I'm talking to people and work's coming in. And God said, that's what I wanted to show you. I'm in control. And you need to start trusting me more. And when people would call me or I'd bump into people about the economy, I'd say, man, I disagree. I said, man, God controls the economy. He's bigger than what you're looking at and what you're thinking. And then God reminded me of something that really paralleled into a lot of things that I like to talk about and do today. So as a man thinketh, he is. And Caroline Leaf explains it so well in layman's terms on the brain and what it does to our bodies and our cells. And into my life, it's like, oh, so whatever I'm thinking, I am. So what am I speaking? What are my actions? What are my beliefs? Because they stem from that. They come from, if I'm believing something and I'm speaking something, then my actions are going to follow that. So if I'm talking to somebody like a younger person, because I coached basketball last year to some young, varsity kids, and it was a great time, but I could tell where they were thinking, what they were doing, and what they were thinking a month earlier, what they were thinking 6 months earlier. And so that really started helping me in my life. And not because, we're humans, so we're not perfect. We make mistakes, we do stuff, but it's like, I have to remind myself, if I'm stuck in a rut or something's going on, what have I been speaking? because that word doesn't return void. And so lately, this inflation, and God reminded me, what are you speaking, Kevin? What are you speaking? And I'm off to probably one of my fastest first 4 months from June 1st till through the end of September in my 25-year career. And it was just, I got again into a negative thing thinking. And then God says, what are you thinking about? Are you not trusting me? And so I do these confessions that I have, that I speak over my life financially, my health, and different things to speak it.
If you want residential or commercial plumbing, give Rick's Plumbing a call. Call Jason or Josh. They'll do you a good job. I use them. I've used them for years. They're no problem.
Come on. Woo!
Now, Zig Ziglar had another common phrase about that, didn't he?
Zig's had a lot of he's had a lot of phrases.
What was it? He said, "So a man thinketh," or something.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but it was the same as lined up with him in what he said. I saw him live in Atlanta, Georgia, a while back, and I was inviting a pastor friend of mine, and he'd never heard of Zig Ziglar. And I said, "Man, you got to come listen to this dude, right?" And he's like, "Kevin, is he really like a real person? Are you pulling my leg?" I go, "I got you a ticket. Just come." So we go there, and it's like a big business forum. It's not a Christian forum. It's a business forum. John Wooden was, no, not John Wooden. It was the lady from, the basketball coach from Tennessee that I think passed away. She was super successful.
Yeah, what was her name?
Pat Summitt.
Yeah.
She was there speaking.
I saw her statue.
Okay.
They made a statue of her, didn't they, Glenn?
Yeah, and so she spoke. Zig was like the last one there. And so he comes out in this crowd. And I said to my friend, I said, he's hysterical, man. He's good. And he comes out there and he said, you know, after his excitement of welcome everybody and how you doing? And he said, you know, I'm not that smart to get all this information that I have. He goes, so I do a lot of reading and I get a lot of information from a lot of other people. And that's what makes me sound smart. He said, but there are two things I read every morning without fail. I read the Bible and I read the newspaper. That way I know what both sides are up to. And the whole crowd erupts. And the pastor's sitting there and he's like, man, I can't believe he just said that. I said, I told you, man, he goes for it. I go, he's good, man. But I love Zig, you know, and I've read some of his books, and you know, when you talk about what you think about in your life in that moment, you know, especially in sales, really in anything in your life, but in sales, I see a lot of guys or ladies where they're struggling. And a lot of companies have great sales training programs. So they kind of teach you technically how to sell, right? But when people are struggling, they're not sure a lot of times how to help them, because they think that what are you not doing and what are you doing? So they start evaluating the performance based of it, and they never get to the emotional side. They never get to the part of what is that person thinking about? Because see, what they're thinking about is more important than what you're trying to get them to do. And so a lot of times people get stuck. And that's where I would like to help people in that realm, because they think, okay, he's not making enough calls, he's not doing this enough, he's not doing that enough. And you brought up Zig Ziglar, which is a great lead in. And Zig said that like 90% of the problems at work stem from the home life. And so they never ask them, well, what are you doing? What are you struggling on? What's going on? Put the work aside for a minute. Let's talk. And when I was in the Air Force, my last year in there, I was a sales trainer. So I used to drive around and help people. So they would send me specifically to people who were struggling. And so I remember meeting with this one guy. And so I called him up and I said, hey man, I'm going to spend about 3 to 4 days with you. I'm going to come in on Tuesday. I'll leave late Friday and drive home. And I said, but I want to, you'd have some appointments in the office, but I want the first morning that I get there, I want to go to breakfast with you away from the office. I just want to go talk. And he said, okay, is everything good? I go, yeah. We just want to talk.
Yeah.
I got to get to know you some more. I go, I know you're struggling right now, but the best way I can help you is by understanding where you're at, what you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're saying, because that becomes your behavior. And see, people try to change their behavior, especially as Christians. Okay, I'm struggling in this sin or this thing, and they try to change that behavior without changing their speaking and their beliefs. And that's where Satan hooks people, because they keep following the same thing. Man, I tried my behavior. I'm good. Then they fall. Well, now I'm bad. And Satan whispers and says, see, you're not meant to be. You're not good enough to do this. Walk away. Whatever Satan's whispering to them, because they never change their belief system on who they are in Christ. And they don't understand that portion of it. So I know using that so I'm talking to this guy and he says, Kevin, I'm working 6 days a week. I'm working 12, 13 hours a day and I'm still hitting my numbers. I said, okay, so are you ready to put away all your thoughts of what you're doing and stick them to the side for a minute and be open to something new? He goes, okay. I go, number one, I don't want you to work every Saturday. Work every other Saturday for right now. He said, okay. 2 nights a week, I want you to stay late. You pick the nights, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. He goes, what about the other nights? I said, you go home at 5. He goes, I'm not going to hit my numbers. I said, are you hitting your numbers right now? No. I said, so do you want to keep doing what you're doing and being frustrated and your wife's frustrated with you right now? He goes, okay. What else? I go, 1 Friday a month. Tell your wife you're going out on a date. 5 o'clock. You leave. Go home. Pick her up. He says, okay, and you're going to show me how to do all this? I go, I am. I go, what's your biggest struggle right now? He said, well, number one, I'm not succeeding. I feel like I'm going to lose this job. I feel like my wife's frustrated with me. I'm never home to help with the kids. I said, okay, have we solved that? He's like, yeah, but I'm still worried about I said, don't worry about the numbers. People think they have to overwork to hit their numbers and then they keep going and they burn out. What you have to do is figure out how to be smarter within the time that you have and balance your life and be where you need to be. And he said, okay. So I said, do you have any appointments set up for today? He said, I do. And I said, okay, how many? He goes, I got 2 back to back. Are they brand new appointments? He said, they are. I said, you do the first one. Can I do the second one? Just so you can watch something different. He goes, okay. He does the first one. This lady wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. She didn't have the numbers to get in. I knew it. He's him hauling around. The dad's there. Dad says, you know what? We're out of here. I said, Dad, can I say something? I've been sitting back just kind of listening. Do you mind if I say something? He goes, sure. I said, do you have the money to send her to school? He said, I don't. I said, her numbers could qualify for an ROTC scholarship. Do you want to try to apply for that? Because just because you can't get into the academy, you can try the ROTC route. And then maybe later on, you can transfer and possibly go that route. And I did help a young girl get into the academy that way whose numbers weren't there. She had straight A's, everything looked good, but her SATs weren't where they needed to be. So we end up helping this girl for the ROTC program. She leaves. He turns around and he's like, how'd you pick up on that? I said, well, I was watching the dad. He's tapping his feet. His thumbs are going like this. And I go, he's ready to leave. And then he got up. I said, the girl was focused only on the academy, but you never showed her any other options. And I said, that's okay. But now you learn as you go, as you see these people, stop getting fixated on what you're trying to do and watch them. Watch what they care about. Watch their nonverbals. Watch their movements. Watch their facial expressions.
Almost ignore what they say, but
yeah,
pay
because
attention to
you're
what...
trying to hear their heart is what you're trying to find. And so the next person comes in, and I was able to help them sign up. And they leave, and we have a break for lunch. So I said, shut the office down. Let's go somewhere and talk. He goes, okay. So we get there, and he goes, Kevin, you barely talked about the Air Force. And they signed up. I said, what did I talk about? He said, you let them talk and you ask them questions about them, who they are, what their desires are. Is the Air Force really for you? Have you really thought it through? And so I said, I wanted to get to here. I wanted to get to the heart, because that's where people are going to make their decisions and what they're feeling emotionally. I said, but then what you need to do, once they've got an emotional decision, teach them the Ben Franklin theory, which is the pros and the cons, and take out the emotional side of it, put down the pros, put down the cons. And then if that weighs in with your decision, you've made a great decision. But you're also showing them that you help them and care, but you're also showing them that you're not afraid to talk to them about not maybe joining.
Hello, I'm Dee Burris, and most of you know me as a general contractor. In October of 2020, I started a podcast that I call The Discussion with Dee Burris. Each week, I have conversations with interesting, informative, and fascinating people from Cleveland and Bradley County and the surrounding areas. You can watch the discussion at dburris.com on YouTube and Facebook, where we would ask you to please subscribe, it's free, for updates and notifications of new shows. It's no problem.
Do you think people ever really change their mind? Or do you think they're just...
Oh, yeah. I've seen a lot of people change their mind.
Maybe their mind was already going there, but they just needed validation?
They did. And a lot of times, like I said earlier, you know, like Caroline Leaf says, we live in this world that's so isolated. And so people just really want to talk. But because we get pulled away, sometimes people are afraid to just talk to people and strangers. And so all these things that I'm talking to you about have helped me in my business with Stoneheart. Because that year that I broke 2 million, I was number one in the company. And it was after a split territory, and it was all those things that we talked about. And that was only because of God, because my attitude was negative. It wasn't good. All God had to do is speak one thing to me in a brief moment and say, Kevin, I need you to rethink this. And when I thought about who opens doors and closes doors, he does.
What do we do when God doesn't answer the prayers?
I think then, you know, it says faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God. And so I think you need to press into the word more and just keep seeking him. And I believe he'll talk to you. You know,
Because some things don't always turn out
they don't.
good.
No, they don't. And so you kind of sometimes end up to a point where you wonder.
Which is where you were when you were 22, right?
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. When my brother died, I felt God failed me. And I maybe couldn't put it in words at that time, but it was probably because I helped raise him, my younger brother.
Yeah.
We grew up. I grew up where my father wasn't in my life at that time, growing up until I was probably in my 30s.
Uh-huh.
So I hadn't seen him from 7 to maybe 30, 31 to something like that.
Did you feel like you had sort of, that you were supposed to be protecting him?
Yeah.
That was
Absolutely.
what bothered you the most, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I saw him, so it was. I showed him how to throw a ball. I showed him how to catch. I showed him how to ride a bike. I taught him how to tie his shoes. I was the one who took his training wheels off and pushed him. And I'm 4.5 years older than him. And recently, I was doing this this book called Grief Recovery, and so it's about whether you go through a divorce or a loss or other big impactful things. And people think sometimes, oh, this must have been a recent thing. No. And as I look back through mine as a brother, I realized I was really kind of a parent in many ways. And I took on that role. And because when my parents divorced, my grandfather sat us down and he said to me and my older brother, "You guys are now the men of the house." And I remember standing up and tapping my chest and going, "I got this, Grandpa. I got this," at 7 years old, going into second grade. And you see it in movies all the time. I'm leaving now. You're the man of the house. Worst thing you can say to a kid. It's not the way it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be a kid, not a parent. That's God's job. That's the other parent's responsibility. And I had to go back and forgive my grandfather, who I adore and love. But when I look back at my brother in that time frame, it was more like you were a substitute parent, not really being a sibling. Not that a sibling wouldn't show a younger sibling things to do, but it was almost like I had a mission. Because once I told my grandfather, "I got this," I took that on. And that paralleled all the way through the rest of my life.
Even in your sales.
Oh, even in the sales. Until recently, doing this grief recovery book, I realized that was never my job. So like I was always this guy that I got this. And as I became more in my Christian walk, it was more like God saying, "You do? Okay. I love you, but I'm not going to violate my word. So if you want to go do this on your own because you got it, Kevin, then go ahead. I'll sit back and watch you. And I love you and I don't want you to do that." And so when the grief recovery went through, it was really about my father. And I ended up writing this letter and I have a great relationship with my dad now. And but I realized there was some unresolved things, and the letter wasn't to him. The letter was only for me to get completeness. Completeness is kind of like in the Bible, wholeness, and in the sense where you completed it. It's not that you looked at it and said, "Okay, it's done," and I pushed it back, and said, "Well, that was years ago. That doesn't really ever affect me." But when you put it in writing and you put it on paper, and you see the things on a graph, good and bad, and say, "Wow, I never addressed that. Whoa, that still affects my decision making today." And I'll never forget, I wrote the letter, and when I got done writing it, I sat back, and I was actually outside of a Starbucks on a patio, and it was nice out, and I was just sipping some tea or something, and I felt like this weight come off my chest and my shoulders, like I was free. And I was just like, wow. Because the moment I took on, "I got this, Grandpa," it changed everything in my life. And now I go back, and that change that's happened within the last month that I've done this course. It's a 7-week. And you get on Zoom with a counselor, and you go through it with them one-on-one. And I realize there's some other relationships I've got to go do this with, but it's changed me. And I just feel a freedom inside of, wait a minute, it's not mine. That's not mine to take on. Why would I take that on? That's God's. And all I keep hearing is, my yoke is light. My burden is easy. Stop carrying it, Kevin. Because I thought, I got to rescue everybody. I got to solve all these problems. And my job is problem solving. You know, hey,
It has been since you were 7.
Oh, yeah.
In your mind.
Oh, in my mind. Absolutely. My mom, I saw her, single mom, you know, and
That's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
It is. Because I used to think at night, who's here if someone breaks in to protect us?
If you were 25, you wouldn't think about that. You'd say, nobody's going to come here. But when you're 7, what would we do?
Right.
You locked the doors before you went to bed, I guess. Check the doors.
I checked everything. Yeah. And that kind of carries on. And you know, so when I get into sales, I look at it like, all the things that I learned at that moment, did it make me a good salesman? Absolutely. But did it also make it where I could have done it a little bit differently and the pressure wouldn't be on me and still enjoy the sales and the relationships? And I do, but I know that as God's changing that, even my sales will evolve as I move forward.
Would you consider yourself a workaholic at any point? I mean, you don't get number 1 in the country by accident.
So in this answer, I'll give it to you in a fleshly way, and then another way spiritually, in the sense of fleshly, I dealt with a lot of pride because of that thing at 7 that I took on, which means I got it. And my mom always said to me, Kevin, you can do anything that you put your mind to. I believed it. I'm going to do it and no one's going to stop me, kind of a thing. That's always been my mentality with that. So that becomes an issue as you're doing that. And I would say this. So when I was in the Air Force recruiting, I was a one-man office. Next to me were the Marines, who I was friends with, loved them. They had about 6 or 7 in the office. The next guys over were the Army. They had about 10 or 12 in the office. And then down the road were the Navy guys. So I always used to go in and I'd say, how many did you guys put in this month? And they'd give me a number. And they'd say, oh, 15. How about you? I said, I did 12. By yourself? Yeah. So I always used to tease them and say, I can outwork you guys in less time. You guys are working more hours than me and I'm still knocking it out. So that became like a prideful thing, even into Stonehard when I started. Like, even that bosses would be like, Kevin, you can get done and still get things, like you could still produce, and I'm still working hours, but there was guys out there working more hours than me. And so there was a prideful thing. So, but as I became a Christian and then I got married, then it became more of a balance in my life. And so God was able to give me the amount of work with less time and still try to balance my family. Not perfectly, but I tried to be at all the events. I tried to be, do the things that I thought were important and be at, whether I would say I'm a workaholic, I probably wouldn't say that I'm a workaholic. I'm just a good worker and I try to do it.
You're very organized, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what probably helps me in my sales.
Do you take a notepad with you?
Uh-huh. And I have a to-do list every day.
Or do you have what they call a computer, a laptop, or do you take a?
I have a laptop, and there's a schedule on the laptop that my company can see and everything. But I also have my own scheduling in a book.
Is it a yellow pad?
And I have a yellow pad or a white pad. And because I find that when I'm out and about in my car, if I pull over, it's easy to make notes.
Yeah.
And write them down, and then later transfer over whatever I need to do. Then I can make the update into the computer.
When do you do that?
So I schedule days where are just office days,
Mhm.
and I could work 10 hours and still not get everything done. But those are the days I try to schedule where I say, okay, these 2 or 3 days I'm in the field, these 2 or 3 days I'm just in an office and I'm just cranking
Would
out
you at night
paperwork.
go over your notes, reorganize them?
So at the end of the day, I look at my list of what I needed. And usually I'll have an asterisk or circles to the ones that I got to get done that day.
Mhm.
And if I've achieved all of those, I always make a new list for the next day.
On the yellow pad?
That's my that's my new to-do for tomorrow.
Was that is that part of being a little OCD also? Do you think?
It could be.
I mean, how long does it take you to go through those notes?
Not long.
30 minutes?
Yeah. And it's really to make sure that I don't forget something that someone's asked me to
Yeah,
do.
they needed 2 gallons of this more.
Right. And to get back to them. Or like, hey, Kevin, we got your bid, but there was an RFI that came out and you missed this or this. Okay. So I know tomorrow I got to get that and get that to them. That's on the top.
Yeah.
As a priority. And I usually have like work to do and then personal to do. That I make.
Did the Army teach you that organization?
The Air Force, they taught us organization, but somewhere along the line, it was in me. And I'll give you this as to kind of put it together. I'm a guy who's playing sports in high school, getting pretty good grades, and every so often, and maybe it started like in middle school, I don't know the time frame, I can't piece it, but I would go to my mom and ask her, can I rearrange the furniture in the house? I think a different look and making it more efficient would be better.
What do they call that? Feng shui?
Feng shui.
Isn't that a term?
Yeah, that wasn't a term I never knew. But
I think that's what they call it.
But my mom would be like, Kevin, if that's what you want to do, fine. But if I don't like it, you'll have to move it back. I'd be like, oh, you're going to like it. That's what I would tell her. So why would a kid do that?
It's just in you.
Yeah.
And those things are in you. I can tell.
So I look at it though, right? And I go, okay. But really where it stems from, it goes back to that childhood.
Yeah.
And because in that childhood, my dad and my mom separate, I couldn't control that. Mm-hmm. But I could control rearranging the furniture. So it became about what can I control to make me feel better for the moment? Was I dealing with my emotions? Probably not. Nobody knew back then.
You were trying to control the controllable.
Yes. Right.
But I had I was going to tell you this. I built a house for this guy, cabin, and real nice cabin, real business guy. And right in the middle of the hallway, he wanted a light switch, not by the door, as you come in.
Right.
And I said, okay. And later on, I said, hey, Max was his name. I said, Max, out of curiosity, why did you want the light switch in the middle of the hall? He said, well, when you come in for groceries, you can turn the light switch after you shut the door. Made all the sense in the world.
It did. It did. That gives me a story that kind of fits what we're talking about because, we're a work in progress with God, right?
Evidently, I am.
And I feel like there's areas I've definitely improved in.
Uh-huh.
So the one I'm getting ready to tell you about, I'm improving in, which is what you're asking about, the OCD.
Yeah.
So we had just gotten married and we're moving into our house. I got 2 buddies helping me. My wife's got 2 of her girlfriends helping. They're in the kitchen. So we're going through and I got a piece of heavy furniture and my buddy's helping me. And we're going through the kitchen and we have to go around to the side to fit the sofa to get it over to here, right? And all of a sudden I said to my buddy, hey, we'll stop for a minute. And he goes, what's up? I look over at my wife and her friend and I go, hey, quick question. Why are you guys putting the coffee on that cabinet, but you're putting the coffee cups over there? And they're like, I go, that doesn't make sense. Wouldn't you want to have it all together where you don't have to walk across the kitchen all the time? Like that?
Yeah.
And then I said, all right, I'm good. And then me and my friend went there. So my wife tells me later, her friend says, was he serious? And this is what my wife said. I'm not sure. But if you asked her today, she'd go, absolutely,
Yeah.
he was serious. But I like to say from that moment, I've improved a lot. But I have a job that fits.
You are where you need to be, aren't you?
I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. I also believe where I believe God wants me to speak.
Is that what you feel like is your calling now to add God to success in your personal?
Yeah, to kind of tell people stories and let them know that where they're hurting, like I'm there with you. I've been in it. And how do we get out of it together? You know, because I think that, you know, the suicide rate's up, all these things that are going on. And I just think people need more love, not finger pointing.
You know, one thing I've found is when you talk to people, if you want to get, I don't want to say on their side, but if you want to get to a close relationship with them, if you talk about shared experiences, something they've done and you've done too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you're a golfer and I'm not, we can't have a real good conversation.
Not about golf.
But if we both, like this construction business, we're both into it.
Yeah,
We could get lost in this for a couple of hours.
we could.
So it's the shared experiences that make a good conversation, I think.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what you're saying when you say you get to know the customer, you get to find out what they need, and you find a connection between your experiences and their experiences.
Yeah, and I feel like if you do what you say you're going to do, even if it didn't end up perfect, and because you're human, some things happen, but you still follow through to correct that, they're going to love you. See, I don't think people are born salespeople. I think sales is more about doing what you're saying you're going to do and relationship and just trying to help people the best you can with what you can.
If you had to give 4 things to being a success, to being a number 1 salesman in the country, what would they be? Not in particular order.
Well, I'll tell them in order. Number 1, put God first. Number 2, put your family. Number 3, do what you say you're going to do. And number 4, follow through with it. Dee, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That was absolutely great.